There is some important news to talk about today. It's CPT news, my favorite. Everybody was waiting for CPT to boot back up. We're all excited about it. And then I see this tweet on the timeline. Just been told that you will not see any UK-based commentators on any of the CPT broadcasts this season, including the UK and Ireland event, May 7th. We went from this photo to nothing at all. This is them doing the finals for Street Fighter, by the way. Words cannot express my disappointment. Yeah, so this is not surprising to me that this is happening. Because if you've been paying attention to, I think, sort of the shift that has happened in commentary for CPT in the last couple of years, it doesn't surprise you. I'm guessing there's two places in the world that matter when it comes to the voices of Street Fighter. If the last seasons of CPT have shown us anything. Southern California and the Midwest. Everywhere else in the world, never heard of them. They don't count. This has been happening more and more and more on Capcom side of things over the years. They have slowly shifted away from using talent from almost anywhere else in the world. Even if you're not thinking about outside of the US, right? When the hell is the last time you saw East Coast commentators doing lots of CPT? Where's Yipes on CPT in general? He is, he should be used all the time. If you think about Street Fighter commentary before COVID, right? It was the case that we had commentators from all over the place, all over the US especially, but we had commentators from Europe doing way more than they do now. We had events in Asia where there was commentators out there and there was mixes of commentators from different places doing things. There was a lot more diversity in terms of who did the commentary where. With how things are during COVID, you would expect that they would use people more worldwide because you have the ability to do online broadcasts and stuff, but it's sort of the opposite. They are using more localized talent. I understand some of you don't like Logan. He is, as his people would call, a wanker, right? But it's not just him that's on this show. There's a few things to think about, right? Between him and Jammers and F-Word, Tyrant, there's a lot of good talent in Europe. That's just off the top, right? There's so many more. Even if you don't like one of them, even if you don't like any of them, it's important to recognize that they are, first of all, excellent commentators in their own right, but also having them be involved in their own region's commentary is pretty important. In the same way that if there's an event happening in the East Coast, you want an East Coast commentator or East Coast commentators on there. If there's events happening in Asia, you want someone who's familiar with the Asia scene, right? Especially if they're local. LATAM, you want somebody who's familiar with whatever region they're featuring that week, right? That is the biggest benefit to having broadcasts like this, is having the ability to tap people from lots of different regions and locations. One of the factors when you're choosing commentators for an event is diversity. The different styles of voices, the different places you're from, the different experiences you have, whether you're a player, whether you're a commentator. I mean, Tyrant talked about this. He quote tweeted this and said, yeah, I've been doing less Street Fighter because they don't care about European voices. So I don't really have a reason to focus on Street Fighter. So I may love the game, but what can I do about it? And what you're seeing is less and less and less people from all over the place, right? You're not seeing the EU commentators. You're not seeing commentators from LATAM. You're not seeing as many commentators from Asia. You're not seeing even commentators from the East Coast of the US, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of the voices that have been involved in previous broadcasts are phased out. I don't think it's entirely budget related either, because there are things that are cheap to do or free to do that they have had in the past that they have canceled or gotten rid of that feature people from other regions. The UK used to do a show and they just got rid of it, and it's the Brian F. and Rob TV show now. Before that show, there used to be a show that you guys probably remember, Capcom Pro Talk, that Mike Ross used to do for free, that they were like, nah, this isn't that valuable. We're not doing this anymore. They are very consistent in phasing out people who are champions for their game, which is honestly a pretty wild thing to think about, no? But it continuously happens year after year after year. And it's very weird. All of them either move on to work on different things or they just stop doing it. And then you hire new people, and these new people, they get in there and they do the job, And it's not just Capcom who does this. I can think of a few different entities that hire people that I know from experience that phase people out for lots of different reasons. A lot of times when you hire new people, the great benefit is you have fresh new talent that, the community is like, oh, cool. They're using new people that, are in the scene or involved, and we like them, and that's cool and all that kind of stuff. And they're less experienced, so if they make mistakes or whatever, these things happen, right? And the second thing is they're cheaper. When I started doing CPT commentary, the CPT rates were on a climb, right? They were going up and up and up and up. And now the CPT rates are lower than when I began commentating. I'm not going to say that my rates aren't higher than most, right? Like I was charging a premium because I was so busy that if I didn't, I would die. But the rates are shockingly bad. And yet, every weekend the show is live. You say like if the pay is bad, then surely everybody won't want to do it, right? But a lot of people need the work. They offer you a tuna sandwich or something. To you, that tuna sandwich is like the greatest offer you've ever had. To somebody else, they're like, dude, what is this offer? Conversely, if you just choose not to take it and then you just don't get hired for like a year, will anybody notice? Like at what point does it just be like people are upset about it to just like they'll watch the product without you anyway? The noise of people cheering for a new person will eventually be louder or like, you know, just more consistent than people frustrated by somebody not getting hired, you know? People don't really notice, or if they do notice, they don't like it, but they don't care long enough for it to matter. You're just like, well, it sucks that they're not getting hired. Oh, anyway, CPT's on. Oh, like Tokido's in grand finals. Let's go. He's playing Daigo? Shit. Sheesh. That's a sick match. Even the Capcom licensing stuff that they posted and stuff. I mean, everybody was real pissed about that for like a week. And then they were like, we'll look into it. And then that was it. Can you run a Street Fighter tournament? I don't know. I don't think it's unusual or surprising at all. Commentators are incredibly expendable. Trust me, I know. There comes that moment where they're like, we've been working for this guy forever and we're annoyed by these 5 things over these years and years and years and et cetera, and like, we don't need to hire this guy. This is this new guy. The community likes this new guy. Let's hire him for lower than we used to pay this other guy by like 3 times, and we're chilling. Whoever's working that event next weekend, when is it? It's not next weekend, it's the weekend after. Whoever's working that UK and Ireland CPT, I wish you the best of luck, whoever's working that gig. You guys got to really try and work on your accents, whoever it is.
Sounds like commentators need a unified body to represent their demands to companies.
Not going to happen.
Just saying.
I try to tell people often, like, hey, you know, this rate, that this and this, it's really bad. So this is what I'm asking for. This is this and this is that. And then somebody else appears. They just pop out and they're the new person doing it. And you're like, well... Anyway, it's a shame, right? It's definitely a shame too, because imagine being a commentator who's excited, you're getting hired for CPT, you're like, this is gonna be sick, I love it here. And then you see this tweet and you're like, oh. When I signed up to do this gig, I didn't know I was taking somebody else's, you know, regional event. In general, as a freelance commentator, you have to understand that there's always an inherent risk, you know, in like what you do. For a lot of reasons. Maybe the game you like changes so much that you're not interested in anymore. Maybe a pandemic happens and the shift is such that the studio where they shoot the events is in LA and you're not in LA. What if somebody just didn't take the work one time and you're like, well, I turned down a tuna sandwich 2 years ago and they never asked me again. Or if just one person at the company is like, fuck that guy. And you're like, okay. And then you just don't get hired. You know, that could happen too. Like all these things are just normal things that could happen in freelance that is out of your control. It's not surprising, and it will not change probably unless people really complain. Because again, even if a lot of people are grumpy about this, at the end of the day, when CPT's on and there's the finals and the players are playing, people are going to be watching regardless of who's on. If you pay any attention to the ecosystem, I think it seems very obvious where they're trying to put their budget and what they care about. Capcom gives a fuck about Street Fighter League, and Capcom likes their shows and pushing talking heads, right? I don't think Capcom really cares as much, or that focus is not as much on CPT these days. I think that's like kind of in the past. And I'm not saying this as someone with some inside knowledge, just like watching what they're doing, it seems like that's the case now. When SFL has like 60,000 viewers, you know, you can tell that they really want it to work, right? It's like what they're trying to do. If you're watching this and you're interested in commentary, or if you're interested in doing broadcast stuff and you're like, God, this seems miserable. That's true. But also, I wouldn't let it dissuade you from being interested in doing your job, you know? Like, I love commentary. Commentary is great. And I would love to do more of it. But also, these things are inherently present in this environment and most work environments. So it's always worth having a backup plan, whether it's additional work or content or doing multiple games. I'm very curious about their plans when Street Fighter 6 comes out, you know. I can't wait to try the game.
Listen.
If Yipes commentates a game that your, you know, company creates, you should be doing anything you can to get him closer to the project and closer to the the stream all the time. The fact that Yipes has not been doing CPT to me is like a failure. I have no idea how that happens. And same thing with all of the other, like there's not that many East Coast commentators that do Street Fighter. I just don't understand it. They have so many good ones. I really do not understand it.